Okay, so it's Amali and Alana again with our history videos. And today I am going to talk about neoclassical to romantic painting in the 19th century in France. So during this period, there was a artist whose name was Ingres, spelled Ingre, which looks like Inger, but he's French, so it's pronounced Ingres. And he was the most famous popular painter of his day. And he would do weird paintings of okay, so this was when France was like a colonial power and they're conquering parts of Africa and going to war with the Ottoman Empire and all this stuff. So everybody was for some reason obsessed with black people owning white slaves, which is ridiculous because most slaves were black people owned by white people. What the fuck, right? So anyway, there's all these paintings by Ingres and other Orientalist artists who were French artists painting pictures of quote unquote the Orient, which means pretty much anything that's not Europe or the Americas, because like North Africa is considered to be the Orient, even though it means East, which is stupid. Anyway, so there's like paintings of like, oh, the white slave, and she's like naked and sitting in a bath with like, a hookah or something. So his, like, the up and coming romantic artists, there was a couple of them. My personal favorite is Delacroix, spelled Delacroix, and he did some really beautiful paintings. He's a romantic painter, so he has a slightly different style than the neoclassical painters that were popular during the time of Napoleon. So this is like a little bit after that. And I think that what happened was the Prussians came in and put the Bourbon monarchy back in charge and, like, had a shadow government, or, like, had a puppet government of the Bourbon monarchy where the Prussians and the British were really controlling things. So Delacroix was a patriot, and he did not like that. He was famous for painting Liberty Leading the People, for instance, where Liberty is holding a gun and leading the French Revolution over a pile of corpses. But this video is not about that painting. So all the Orientalist painters are like, oh, white slave, blah, 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 blah. Let's paint a picture of a naked white lady with a bunch of black people around who are rapey and weird. And I'm like, ew, gross. So Delacroix, later in his life, I think after Ingres dies, is invited on a diplomatic mission to go to Morocco and Algeria. And he somehow convinced an Arabic man in North Africa to let him paint his harem. And instead of painting a bunch of naked white women, Delacroix painted women in clothing. And they're not even showing cleavage or anything. And they are smoking hookahs. But it's actually like the most respectful painting of quote unquote Oriental women from the entire period. And everybody's all like, oh, well, Delacroix, he painted a bunch of naked women all the time. And I'm like, yeah, but when he was painting a portrait of like real women, he had them in clothing. Like, like he has friends with this Arabic guy who had a harem, and he's like, oh yeah, paint my 3 wives. And he's like, he doesn't make them sexy, like they're not sexy, they just look like normal people. So I think that's super interesting, because I'm like, Delacroix, like, sure, you've painted pictures of naked women, and some of those paintings are offensive, but for these actual women who actually existed, like, he painted a pretty respectful portrait of the 3 of them, and they're covered up, like, no cleavage or anything, like, like, their faces show. They're not wearing veils or anything. I am like, that's pretty cool. Delacroix, you're pretty cool. He also painted a bunch of cool lion hunts with, like, crazy men stabbing lions with spears and stuff. I don't know. I really like Delacroix. My favorite painting by him is called Heliodorus being kicked out of the temple or something like that, which is a deuterocanonical tale that is from biblical literature but did not make it into the King James Bible. And basically, in this story, what happens is Heliodorus, who's a Roman soldier, tries to, like, fuck up this Jewish temple, and God sends an angel and a horse down to fuck him up. And I'm like, you sent, like, a horse? Like, why did you send a horse? But there's, like, all these paintings of this horse, like, kicking Heliodorus.
The horse will stampede to death.
Horse? Yeah, he stampedes Heliodorus to death. And, like, those paintings are fucking sweet. The one that Delacroix did, that's one of my favorite paintings of all time. It's beautiful. Anyway, so you should look that up. Heliodorus being expelled from the temple by Delacroix. And also Delacroix, the Women of Algiers, because it's so weird, because every other painter is, like, painting pictures of white slaves naked with, like, black people exploiting them, which is, like, the opposite of what was happening at the time, with black slaves being transported all over the place and white people exploiting them. So, kind of weird. Anyway, end of transmission.